Let's take a trip around the curve. Vanessa Kirby, Sydney Sweeney joined Jude Law, Ana de Armas, and Daniel Bruhl in Ron Howard's renamed survival thriller Eden. The 2023 Gotham Awards are presenting Michael Mann's Ferrari with the Icon and Creator Tribute for Innovation. AMC Networks is to air Disney's scrapped 20,000 Leagues series Nautilus. The 10-episode live-action series will also stream in 2024. Blankson Wood joins Eddie Redmayne and Gail Rankin for Broadway's upcoming Cabaret. Hunger Games prequel Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes approved for an interim agreement, which stars Rachel Zegler and Viola Davis among the few able to promote the Lionsgate film. It follows the sequel, They Follow, with Maika Monroe, launches at AFM via Neon. Amazon MGM Studios' Michael B. Jordan's Outlier Society are developing a fantasy series based on Rebecca Yarros' bestseller. Saoirse Ronan is set for Jonathan Etzler's satirical thriller Bad Apples, and Michael C. Hall and Grace Caroline Curie join Heaven's Gate's cult biopic The Leader. Aaron Tveit and Sutton Foster are set for the new cast of Sweeney Todd on Broadway. UTA signs Zarar Zan, director of Pakistan's Oscar entry In Flames. Daisy Ridley is set to star in the survival thriller from Zach Hilditch, and Bleecker Street Stone Age horror thriller The Origin, renamed Out of Darkness, is set for a 2024 theatrical release. Actor Ariane Mayaved signs on to executive produce the Oscar contender Jonam, award-winning documentary on Iranian-American experience. Hell-bent on changing her station from actress to writer-director, Jen Esposito signs with Echo Lake for filmmaking after Fresh Kill's debut. Tyler Christopher, best known for his role as Nicholas Cassadine on General Hospital, died this week at the age of 50. Broadway newcomers Brody Grant, Brent Comer, and Jason Schmidt make their debut in the Outsiders musical this spring. All three were in the world premiere at La Jolla Playhouse earlier this year. The Huey Lewis musical The Heart of Rock and Roll sets a Broadway spring opening, and Christopher Nolan is to be honored at the 2024 Sundance Film Festival's opening night gala, celebrating 40 years. Josh Duhamel and Greg Kinnear headline the action thriller Off the Grid. It is an interim agreement film. Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny sets a holiday season Disney Plus premiere date, and the WGA Awards are set a month after the Oscars as the strikes continue, shaking up award season. Netflix Geeks is returned for its third iteration. Geeked Week is a week-long virtual event celebrating Netflix's genre series, films, and games that runs from November 6th through the 12th on YouTube, Twitch, Instagram, and TikTok. Disney is buying out the Comcast stake of Hulu for $8.6 billion. Academy Museum Gala set for December after postponement in wake of Hamas attack on Israel. Kelly Riley and David Strahan are among the cast set to join Samuel L. Jackson and Boyd Holbrook in the prison drama Last Meals. Ava DuVernay's romantic series starring Joshua Jackson and Lauren Ridloff will not be moving forward as stars. Black Klansman producer is adapting Charlie Donleg's bestseller 20 years later for television. And Netflix has laid off a handful of executives in its drama and overall deal divisions. Nick Broomfield spills the tea on Brian Jones. We got Milli Vanilli and Radical coming up next on The Curvy Critic with Carla Renata right now.
Hold up. Wait a minute. I wish you love, peace, and hair grease.
Love, peace, and hair grease, y'all.
Straight from the hip.
This is Carla Renata, aka The Curvy Critic, and I shoot straight from the hip.
Yeah, you know I'm always shooting straight from the hip.
Hello, everybody. Oh boy, that was really far down, wasn't it? Hi, happy Sunday. Thank you for joining me for this brand new episode of The Curvy Critic with Carla Renata. I'm your host, Carla Renata, and what we do here is we talk about movies and we interview people above and below the line in the film industry. If you are on YouTube, give me a big thumbs up to let me know you are here. If you're watching via LinkedIn, Facebook, or some other social media platform I have this on that at the moment has fogged my brain and I can't think of what it is. Please do me a favor and like the channel and subscribe, because you never know who you might see here. Before I get into what I did this week, which was literally nothing because I have a little bit of a cold and some allergies going on, I like to check in with my boy Brandon, who always stops by and leaves me some comments. So this week he says, what does he say? He had a great birthday last week. That's right. Your birthday was last week. And he's going to see Trolls 3 and Wish this month, and the Scott Pilgrim anime this month, Migration, Leo, Chicken Run 2 next month. Cool. He keeps me on track with the animation stuff. I will be seeing Wish. I will be seeing Trolls 3. I will come back and talk about those when it is time, Brandon. So thank you for always popping in and supporting me. I really do appreciate it. I got a lot of things to talk about today, so I'm just going to get right into it. Like I said, I spent most of my week in the bed because you hear how I sound. I sound like I got something in the back of my throat, but I don't. But I want to talk about a few documentaries that I saw. One of them is called Milli Vanilli. Now, I was fortunate or unfortunate, depends on how you look at it, to live during the time that this was actually taking place. And this took place in 1991, I believe. No, this took place in 1989. And then 2 years later, something else went down. So let's talk about what happened with Milli Vanilli. So Milli Vanilli was a really popular group. Rob was from France. Um, I'm sorry, Rob was from Germany, Fab was from France, and they got together. They had become friends in Germany. They were roommates. They were hell bent on becoming stars. And then they get a deal with this guy named Frank Farian, who actually decided to use their image, but have other people record the song. So I'm going to come back on camera so that you can hear me talk about this for just a second, because it's kind of bananas what went down during that time. So during this time, there were a lot of groups. We were coming out of, we were going into like a club age in the 80s and 90s. There was a lot of club music going on, a lot of dance music going on. And in 1989, Milli Vanilli just filled that void, right? They ended up being signed domestically by Clive Davis's Arista Records. And they put out a song called Ooh, 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 Do You Know It's True, Girl, I Love You, right? The thing about it is, it wasn't them singing. They are the only Grammy nominated, Grammy winning artist in the history of the music industry to win a Grammy and then have to give it back because they weren't singing on the record. How it even got to that point, I don't even know, but I remember this happening in real time, and it was not an industry secret that they weren't singing. Like everybody, I was a music publicist at the time. Everybody in the music industry knew that they weren't singing. Everybody knew it. They went on an MTV. MTV was huge at the time, and they would do these tours to promote new artists like Milli Vanilli in hopes of them winning an American Music Award or Grammy Award or something like that. So, yep, eventually Milli Vanilli did go on and they did win. Um, they did go on to win an American Music Award. They did go on to win a Grammy. They had all kind of promotional things done. But the funny part about all of this is that they weren't doing the singing. There was a dude named John Davis, Jody and Linda Rocco, who were sisters, and Brad Howell that did all the background vocals. Rob and Fab did none of the background vocals, not a one. They were told by Frank Farian not to come into the studio, not to record anything. I'm not going to tell you everything there is to know about this documentary because I want you to watch it because your mouth will be like blam blam on the floor. But I did want to tell you this. 2 years later, in 1991, there was a guy named, two dudes named David Cole and Robert Clavellis. They formed a group called C&C Music Factory. And they had a really popular song that came out called Everybody Dance Now. Everybody Dance Now. You know that song. Dun, 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 dun. That's them, right? But the person who was actually doing the lead vocals was this woman right here, Martha Wash. So this was like it was like a trend that was happening in the music industry, and people were like, you know what? No. Not only was Martha Wash the voice for C&C Music Factory, she was also the voice for Black Box, who did a song called Everybody, 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 Everybody. Okay. So Martha Wash was doing the voice for C&C Music Factory and Black Box. And this is Martha Wash so that you can see that she looks drastically different than the doll in this picture and the doll in this picture, who are both thin and have a certain look to them. You catch my drift? I knew that you could. However, in the end, Rob ended up losing his life. Rob would be the one on the right, the light skinned brother. The pressure of keeping that secret and being taken down was way too much for him. He eventually just was found dead due to drugs and Lord knows what else he was doing. It was very, very tragic. But Fab is still here. And Fab made it right by hooking up with John Davis. And that is the two of them singing together. Rob can actually sing. He's not like a singer, but he can actually sing. And I was happy to see that he found a way to make that right. So again, that documentary is called Milli Vanilli, and it is streaming on Paramount Plus right now. There's an actor named Eugenio Derbez, and Eugenio is known so well in this country for his comedy, but he's very least known for his dramatic roles. And I've always said that comedy is a lot harder than drama, but he has taken on this film recently about this group of kids that were found out. They live in I think it's Matamoros, Mexico. Let me go down here and find it. Yeah, Matamoros, Mexico. They were found there. It's right on the border of the U.S. border. And a guy from Wired magazine went down there and wrote a story about these kids and their teacher, whose name is Sergio Carrera. And basically, what happens is in this Mexican border town plagued by neglect, corruption, and violence, a frustrated teacher, Sergio, who's played by Eugenio, tries a radical new method to unleash the curiosity and potential of his students and maybe even their genius. And it's based on a true story. This is Sergio and the genius. Her name is Paloma. And Paloma ended up being dubbed the next Steve Jobs because her scientific mind was bananas. This little girl knew stuff and could put figures together in a blink of an eye, and nobody expected her to because she was from a border town in Mexico, which goes to show you it only takes one teacher, it only takes one person to believe. Let me move this over a little more. It only takes one person, one teacher to believe in you and make a difference. For me, that person was a woman named Brenda Gray. She was married to Mel Gray, who was a football player for the St. Louis Cardinals at the time. And she encouraged me to write. She encouraged me to write about my experiences, to write about how I was feeling. I have an article, not an article, but I have a essay that I wrote in, I guess I was in the 10th grade when I wrote it, called Heroes, that she encouraged me to write. And I read it and I kept it. I still have it. And when I read it back, I'm like, wow, I actually wrote that. That's bananas. But she encouraged me when I was in high school. And when I got to college, there was a professor named Vera Katz who encouraged me with my acting. Nobody else was encouraging me, but Professor Vera was like, you can do this. You're great at it. Keep going, don't give up. She tied me in with some people from Howard University to keep me encouraged while I was in New York. And you see where that has taken me. It's taken me all over the world. So I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the educators that were wonderful to me, Miss Brenda Gray and Professor Vera Katz. And there's so many more, but those two are the ones that really made a difference for me. And I have made a difference for some kids too. I was an adjunct professor at Pace University for a little bit, and I had some unconventional methods of teaching, just like Sergio does at his school in Mexico. And I saw some of my students, my unconventional methods encouraged even the shyest of students and infuriated the most independent of students. But it made them think and it invigorated that mind of theirs. So that's all that I wanted to do. Eugenio Derbez is a fantabulous actor. He puts so much heart and soul into every role that I've ever seen him do. And I've seen quite a bit. And it's so funny that he's in this kind of role again, because a couple of years ago, he was in Coda, where he also plays a really hard-nosed teacher in that one. This one's a little more empathetic than the one he plays in Coda. But I love him in these types of roles. He's really, really wonderful. And all of the kids were absolutely fantastic. If you want to know more about these kids, that the true story has been wrapped around into this movie, Radical, go check out the article in Wired magazine. You can find it online anywhere and read it. It will blow your mind. The article is called A Radical Way of Unleashing a Generation of Geniuses. That's what it's called. Radical is in theaters. It has been in theaters since November 3rd. Please do yourselves a favor and check it out because it is absolutely fantabulously and wonderful. Now, I did see this movie, which is a little crazy. It's called It's a Wonderful Knife. I know. And y'all know that I don't really get down with horror and stuff like that. But this is going to be only in theaters beginning November 10th. It's from the producers of Black Christmas and Freaky, and it's directed by Tyler McIntyre. It's written and produced by Michael Kennedy, and it stars Justin Long, Jane Widdop from Yellow Jackets, Catherine Isabel, Jess McLeod, and Cassandra Naud. What I will say about this is that Jane Widdop from Yellow Jackets, she's a beast. Her and Jess McLeod have just the right amount of humor and intensity that makes these types of films work because they can easily be very corny, mostly predictable, and that's coming from somebody that don't watch a whole lot of horror movies. But what I loved about this movie more than anything was the fact that it revolves around the Aurora. So Jane's character Winnie ends up wishing like It's a Wonderful Life. So the title is a play on It's a Wonderful Life, It's a Wonderful Knife. So it's like a mix up of like if Scream met It's a Wonderful Life. It's kind of all of that mixed up into one. Um, and that's what the film is. So Jane goes and she looks at the aurora and she makes a wish that she had never been born, and it turns her life upside down. So, what is an aurora, do you ask? I will tell you. An aurora is known as the northern lights or the southern lights, and it's a natural light display in the Earth's sky, which is a display of dynamic patterns of brilliant lights that appear as curtains, rays, spirals, or dynamic flickers covering the entire sky. So I did love the fact that they kind of moved a little science into this story. That I know that face is freaking you out, right? That face is supposed to be like the angel, more like the angel of death. But I love that there was, like in Scream, there was a constant twist on the whole entire thing. So that is It's a Wonderful Knife. It is going to be only in theaters on November 10th, brought to you by Shudder and RJLE Films. Nick Broomfield is an expert documentarian who does most of his stuff is done on pop figures like Biggie, Tupac, Suge Knight, and then he switches and he goes to like the Grim Sleeper and some other true crime things. So, but I spoke to him about the Stones and Brian Jones. The Stones and Brian Jones, the film, the documentary that Nick is directing, has a one night only screening on November 7th. You can check your local listings to see where that is, but it will be playing everywhere on November 17th. Now, the thing about this film that's very interesting is that most people like myself, I'll come back on camera, most people like myself think of the Rolling Stones as being founded by Mick Jagger and Keith Richards. Like you just automatically think that. Unless you are a diehard, music history buff, then you know better. But I am not a diehard music history buff. I'm just someone who worked in the music industry for a really long time, and I worked with Black musicians. So in the R&B and pop genres. So having said that, that's what I thought. I thought I thought the Stones were Mick Jagger and Keith Richards. Come to find out, the Rolling Stones were co-founded by Brian Jones. Brian Jones was a musician in his own right, but he wasn't a songwriter. And so due to the lack of his songwriting skills, the group kind of parted ways, and helped them, and because Mick and Keith's songwriting skills were a little bit better, that helped to catapult the group into the superstardom that we know them to be right now. He was very troubled. He had a lot of kids. He had a lot of relationships, but he was enormously gifted, which I find during that time and era in our country and abroad, a lot of these artists, due to the times, there was a lot of drugs, there was a lot of free love going around. People just couldn't stay focused and they couldn't get out of their own way. And it's unfortunate because had he lived, he would have seen his group still surviving 60 years later. So two of the surviving members of the Stones, one of them being Bill Wyman, had some diaries, and he lent those diaries to Nick Broomfield, and as well as being on camera, being interviewed and telling some stories there about the Stones and their legacy. So having said that, I'll let Nick tell you a little bit more about Brian Jones and the Stones. Your body of work seems to be, it leans toward people that are in the pop culture lane, like Whitney and Eileen Wernos. You were the last person to speak to her. What was it about Brian Jones when you met him at 14 years old on that train that made you want to do a documentary on him 60 years later?
Well, I think it was a sort of seminal moment for me. I was, 14 in my little flannel outfit going back to school. And the Stones represented everything we kind of wanted, which was they were anti-authority. They did terrible things that we all wanted to do. All the girls loved them. And they, although their hair actually looks very short now when we look at it, it was outrageously long then. And, you just had to mention their names and every parent in the room would scowl and say dreadful things. So they were our heroes. And seeing him just sitting all by himself in his first class railway carriage was, I couldn't really believe it. And then when I asked him for his autograph, which was really just an excuse to get in there, he then sort of said, sit down, what would you, and he mainly wanted to talk about being a railway enthusiast, being a train spotter, which you really don't expect from your rock star. That, he wants to be, and he had a train set until in his 20s. He and Stu, who used to drive them all around in the van, they used to go and collect stuff for his railway set when they were on tour, which you really don't expect either. So he was, a strange mixture of things, I think. And I was pretty amazed by him. And then even more disturbed, I think, when, 6 years later, he was dead. And he was somebody who seemed to have, the world at his feet, really. Everything we all wanted.
Yeah, I think our fascination, people that are normal people, our fascination with celebrity, rock stars, movie stars, TV stars, we think that they have this life that's perfect, that's not angst, or they don't have any problems. Like they wake up and it's just a golden life from the moment they open their eyes to the time they go to sleep. And we don't realize that that type of life comes with a certain set of challenges that most people don't have to deal with. Speaking of which, Brian's challenges were the fact that I did not know until I watched your doc, his contributions to Painted Black, his contribution to Satisfaction, and his contribution to Ruby Tuesday. I had no idea. Why do you think that that's been, and people may know in the UK, but here in the States, I didn't know that. And I'm a huge music head. So I was like, it's happening right now that I don't know that. Why do you think that there was such, it seems like there was great lengths to make sure that we didn't know that, because we always think that it was Mick Jagger and Keith Richards that did those songs completely. And now we find out that that's not necessarily the case.
Well, maybe there's been a bit of rewriting history, And of course, Brian died so young, and he wasn't the most popular member of the band, I think, when he left, But he was the guy who formed the band, who was the most musically accomplished when they were all put together. And he was somebody who just loved musical instruments. I mean, he could go into a room and pick up a recorder or pick up a harpsichord, or not pick a harpsichord up, but play a harpsichord and be completely conversant with it within, a few minutes, and would delight in playing odd instruments. Like when he played with the Beatles, they thought he was going to bring his guitar along on that track, You Know My Name, and he brought a saxophone, and they were all like, what? What are we going to do with a saxophone? And then, of course, they were so brilliant, they thought of You Know My Name. But I think, Brian had that ability. Like in Paint It Black, he put that amazing guitar, sort of almost Eastern weird guitar music in, or Ruby Tuesday again with it was just a little recorder he was using. So he had that kind of genius. He didn't, though, have the genius of being able to write songs, which was what Mick and Keith had. And that's what took over. And that's really, I guess, what the Stones became known for.
Yeah, I found all of that very, very fascinating. I also found this fascinating, that a lot of the information was coming from Bill Wyman and diaries and notes that he kept along the way. Is there anything that he shared with you that didn't make it into the doc?
He had a sort of love for Brian, and also he thought Brian was pretty damn difficult. I think they had a terrible touring schedule. They sort of played 360 gigs a year, and they were constantly being in this awful van being moved around, and half of them having to sleep the night in the van, and they would get out to a cafe to go and have something to eat, and Brian would say, "Oh, I don't want to eat." And then they'd get back in there, and then he'd say, "Oh, I've got to eat now." And that he would just make them crazy by being really difficult. And so Bill had some of those kind of stories, but Bill had a big heart. I think he just felt sorry for Brian, really, that Brian was his own worst enemy sometimes. He was like kind of like a kid who wanted attention as well as being rather brilliant.
Yeah, I felt like there was a lot of mention throughout the documentary about him being unhappy with his size. I think he was really short or something. And
right.
He was really paranoid or self-conscious about that, which I think gave him like that Napoleonish kind of complex where he would act out to bring attention to himself. I was just curious. He had a lot of kids.
Yeah.
He was busy. Do we know what happened to any of his kids, or what happened to his?
Yeah, I mean, I've met a couple of the kids, and I would have put them in the film, except that they had absolutely no relationship with Brian. He did die so young, but he was somebody who was always kind of looking for a family for himself. It's very interesting that the mothers of his girlfriends would always mother him and iron his shirts and make his meals. And, I think he got thrown out of his own home when he was about 17. And he then just looked for another family. And so I don't think he was mentally capable of dealing with having a kid of his own, really. And this was, you have to remember, it was before actually birth control. It was before the pill. It was before the pill. Otherwise, it would be very hard to understand what happened.
It was a lot going on with him. I was like, okay, he was busy. He was very busy. And just closing it out, I was just curious to know, what is it about these types of pop culture-ish people, like the Suge Knights, the Sarah Palins, the Brian Joneses, that draws you to these subjects and makes you want to get their story out to the masses?
Well, I guess they're kind of historical figures, and they represent something very significant about our time, our history, our time. And I hope as a sort of collection of films, if anyone ever watches them, that they will get a sense of our time, our world, some of the weird and wonderful figures that have been produced by it, and the kind of forces and culture and backgrounds and families and so on that have produced them.
Nick, it has been my pleasure to talk to you today. You gave me some wonderful answers. And
Well,
not for nothing, but I was very impressed that you did a whole thing about the Grim Sleeper, because true crime is my thing. And I was like, I couldn't believe that story when I heard about that one. So I was really impressed about that. So I just wanted to say that before we close it out, because I was like, oh no, he did the Grim Sleeper too.
Yeah, that was an amazing experience. Yeah, and I actually made a lot of great friends in Compton, around Compton. So it was actually a great experience doing that film.
Good. I'm so glad to hear that. Well, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Appreciate you. I really did enjoy this doc. It was very enlightening, and I hope that other people are enlightened and educated when they see it too.
Thank you.
All right. Bye. He was lovely to talk to. I really enjoyed talking to him. All right. So let me just recap what we talked about. The Milli Vanilli doc, which is streaming right now on Paramount Plus. You want to check that out. You also want to check out Radical, starring this dude right here. Let me find this picture. Eugenio Derbez. You want to check out Radical, which is going to be in theaters worldwide on no, what am I saying worldwide? It's in theaters right now. What am I talking about? I've lost my mind. And then we also talked about It's a Wonderful Knife. This is the one that is going to have a one-night event on November 7th, and then it will be everywhere in theaters everywhere on November 17th. And of course, you can stream The Stones and Brian Jones. It will be coming out very, very soon. I will let you know when that is happening. So I will not be here next week, but when I come back, I will be covering these films. As I had mentioned before, we will be talking about Wish. We'll be talking about Trolls Band Together, Napoleon. Believe we've talked about American Fiction, but we will talk about it again because it is coming to theaters in December. Saltburn and The Marvels. And I'm going to come back on camera so that you can see me. Oh, and I just want to say one more time, please check out Radical. It is an amazing, amazing story. It is based on a true story. It won the festival favorite prize at Sundance this year. You guys, please check out that movie. It is really wonderful. The performances and the story is great. We've seen seen elements of the story before, like in Dead Poets Society, To Sir With Love. It's like a Latino To Sir With Love. I kind of love it. It was great. It was really great. But yes, so that's it. I will be out of town this week, and I will be going to Washington, D.C., and then I will be making my way to New York City. So to attend the Doc Awards, which myself and our nominating committee have worked so hard to get together, and I can't wait to see who the winners are going to be. That's happening November 12th in New York City, so I will be there for that. And I'm going to DC for a little business trip, and that's that. So thank you so much for joining me. Thank you so much for watching the podcast and telling your friends about it and supporting me. I really, really do appreciate it. Child, one of my friends said to me this week that I was like the chocolate version of Roger Ebert. I'm like, I will take it. The chocolate female version of Roger Ebert. I will take all of that. But having said that, I just want to remind you again, give me a big thumbs up to let me know you were here. Because if you don't give me a thumbs up, I don't know you was here. I don't know that you even watched it. And people be seeing me in the street all the time talking, girl, I saw your podcast. No, you didn't, because you didn't give me a thumbs up. And I'm going to need a thumbs up from you and everybody else that saw it. So having said that, love, peace, and hair grease. And I'll see you in 2 weeks. Count it, 2. All right. Bye.